The Retirement Cafe Podcast, Episode 17, How to Retire If You Own a Business, Part 2 with Barry Van Danzig.
Retired or thinking about retirement? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe Podcast. In each episode, we bring you an important conversation with insight, tips and knowledge, all designed to help you live a fulfilling and successful life in retirement. Here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner and Accredited Later Life Advisor, Justin King.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Cafe Podcast. In this episode, I welcome back a client and friend of mine, Barry Van Danzig. Now, you may have heard my conversation with Barry in episode 16, where we started talking about the difficult transition from business owner to retirement. So welcome back, Barry.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Barry, we've already chatted about the difficulty of retiring from your own business, and we touched on, the business journey that you went through, and you got to the stage where you're like, okay, well, I've got an option. How do I make myself redundant? And we talked about your story with the venture capitalist, and we know that there was a number of options you were thinking about, and the first option you had a go at actually didn't work, and thanks so much for sharing that story. Fantastic. So we left last episode with you've just got that control from the venture capitalists. There's a very short window that they've got to do a deal on. What happened next?
Well, so now I bought them out,
right?
Largely with their own money, which was quite interesting. But and off they went. Following that, I made Lynn Cullis, who's been with me, she's now been with me over 20 years.
Right.
I put her in charge, joint charge with me.
Okay.
And she'd had a rough ride for 2 years because people knew that she was my key person.
Was she with you before the venture capitalist
yes,
guys? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
So
she'd been with me. Actually, she came from our auditors.
Right.
She was accounts backed.
Okay.
And she was FD. And then they just wanted to get shot of her, but of course they couldn't get shot of her because they wouldn't allow it.
No.
So she had to hang in there.
Yeah.
And I said, well, as a reward, you can go and fire all those people who've given you a rough ride over the last 2 years.
Right.
Oh, can I? She said. So we got rid of all of the people that they put in and reduced the business back down to the virtually the original team.
Right.
We'd had to let the waste lake business go because it had literally been wrecked,
Right.
By the VC. So we did sell that, and that left us with the new compliance businesses. And the compliance business suited us extremely well because it was legislation based and again cash positive.
So what did that business do?
Well, it's to do with the packaging European EU legislation on packaging waste recycling. Very topical now,
right?
Because of course we all know about plastics in the oceans.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
20 years ago, guess what we were talking about?
Right.
Plastics in the oceans.
Right.
And how that packaging waste has got to be recycled.
Okay.
And the government brought out legislation that forced users of packaging.
Yeah.
To pay to have that packaging recycled at the end of its life.
Right.
So they had to sign a contract. Now what we had, this is the fascination of this scheme is that they have a thing called an exemption scheme.
Right.
So a company can register to be a compliance scheme, and other companies then join our scheme and they are exempt from prosecution, and it's criminal prosecution.
Okay.
So they think, oh, that's marvellous. And again, going back to where I said before, my background was all about contracts.
Yeah.
So we had the contract, and the contract says, if you join us, you are exempt from prosecution. We get prosecuted on your behalf, because we've taken on the liability. But you have to sign this contract, which has an unlimited amount of money you have to pay us in order to meet your compliance.
Right.
So you can imagine the conversation with the likes of supermarkets and things. You say, well, how much is it going to cost? We said, we don't know.
No.
And you can never know because you're looking to a future cost, which is impossible to determine.
Right.
But we because of our experience that we'd had in the waste management side, they trusted us because we had an excellent relationship with them all to do the job fairly, properly, and to the best of anybody's ability.
Right.
So there was a government-backed scheme, and us, and there were only 2 schemes, and more schemes came along afterwards. But we maintained our position as the one behind the government-backed scheme. But we made more profit than they did. But and we now recycle about 750,000 tonnes of packaging every year.
Right. So, you think about making yourself redundant. You're all of a sudden back in the chair here, aren't you? So tell me about,
Right.
Retirement Cafe podcast listeners want to know how you got out.
Right.
What were your choices now?
We're now left with the same issues.
Yes.
There are only 3.
Right.
So we're either going to sell the business.
Yeah.
Been there.
Okay.
I can tell you all about, and for your listeners, what the pitfalls are and what the problems are, and you may want to do it still. It's businesses are sold all the time.
Sure.
So that was.
There's a clean break scenario there, isn't it? I can see that might be attractive to some people.
Absolutely. The other one is to say, well, no, I will carry on. Look at me, I'm fit as a butcher's dog. I'm only 63 years old, and of course I'm not going to retire. Well, yeah, at 63 you may think that. At 65 you start having a different view. At 70, time is catching up with you.
Right.
So even if you want to do that, the same essential reality stands there. And the third one is that, well, I'll keep the business as what's called a lifestyle business.
Yeah.
I still own all the shares. It runs without me. And it just pays me.
Right. So that's where you're at.
So that was the one that I ended up choosing. I'd like to go through the others as well, to let you know how I got to
Absolutely
to that one.
Please do.
So, just to finish off on the selling bit, as I say, your imagination is that you're going to sell it and you're going to make a lot of money and you're going to move off. Well, it doesn't quite work like that, because you yourself are unlikely to be able to sell the business yourself. You're going to have to, it's like selling a house, you're going to go to an estate agent.
You need an agent. Right.
You go to an agent, and the cost of that agent is astronomical.
Right.
When we did the first one with the VC, the due diligence was £1 million.
Yeah.
And it was paid for by what they called is, and they explained to me, it's the target that pays for it. And I said, what's the target? Your company is the target. Because the way that works is you both leave the company mentally, because you're now just shareholders and investors, and you pile all the debt into the company that you owned, which is, again, where it all started to go wrong. And you put a new management team in. You have to have a management team that you can trust. And going outside and bringing somebody in is actually, it's going to take a number of years for you to be able to trust that person with your baby.
Yeah.
You made this thing, you love it, but that person is key. And the way that I'll probably come in a minute and show you exactly how I did that bit of getting that trusted person in. But before you get to that point, you have to jump over the psychological barrier of what is this business for? I love my business. I've got my desk, I've got everything, I'm in charge and all the rest of it. And I love that. Well, that isn't what the business is about.
No.
The only thing the business is about is making money.
Sure.
Because it's an investment. And hard-nosed as it sounds, that's what you have to be with yourself. And you have to say, this business is an investment. I expect it to produce this amount of money for me. And as long as it continues to produce that amount of money for me, then it's fine. So you're back to this retirement issue, and you have to step away and make yourself redundant.
Right.
So how do you do that? The other two options. One is to keep going yourself. You can't.
No.
Because age. I mean, just a simple, quick little story I'm going to tell you that sort of brought it home to me. The older you get, the less nonsense you're prepared to put up with.
Right.
And you're going to see clients who are talking to you. I sat across a group who seemed to be more like 12 years old, and they were telling me how the world worked. And you sort of think, oh, for goodness sake. And the temptation to put them right becomes too much.
Yeah.
And eventually your own team say to you, don't come to any more meetings because you're too brutal, you're too blunt. And I took that on board and I thought, well, I'm going to be more of a menace to this as I get older. So you have to back away.
Well, a lot of self-awareness, though, you showed with that kind of,
You have to, well, it's how we are, isn't it? You have to be that self-aware.
Yeah.
And you have to look in the mirror and say, you're not 40, you're not a thrusting 35-year-old, you're 65 pushing 70.
Yeah.
And it's time to move on to the next stage.
Yeah.
Because the risk of you not doing that is that if you have somebody in charge at your age, and ask yourself this question: if you were now looking to replace yourself, would you employ somebody who was your age? The answer was, of course you wouldn't.
No.
You wouldn't dream of it because you know full well that they're not qualified to do the job anymore, and nor are you.
Yeah.
And that's a pill you have to swallow.
Great.
So once you've got to that point and you've gone, okay, I accept that, it's really fabulous because you're now moving yourself away from all the problems of the business, and most of the problems are sort of trivial. Some are huge, but you have to move yourself away from it. And I brought Lynn on, and I told her I was doing it to be CEO.
Right.
And as I say, we've been together for over 20 years now. We never had a crossword. So she more and more took over, and surprise, surprise, she ended up better than me.
Right.
By a country mile.
Okay.
Because the thing that she could do that I couldn't do, and never know how to do, was all the detail.
Right.
Because she had an accounts background.
Yeah.
She knew how to get everything organised, and everything runs beautifully. But the way I run the company now, and the way I started running it then, is by the accounts. Because going back to what I said about the money, the only important thing is the money. So what I did with her, I said, look, this is the business as it is now, and this is how much I take out of it every year. I'm now handing over to you. You are going to have this salary. And she very, quite rightly, said to me, no, I'm not. I'm going to have what you had.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing the same job. And I sat there and went, well, you can't be worth as much as me. In my head. How can you be worth the same as me?
Sure.
Of course she was.
Yeah.
So she took over my job. She took over my salary and all the benefits that I had.
Yeah.
So now she's in charge. And she's not going anywhere because no one else is going to possibly give her a package of that level. And then I said, for everything you grow over and above, that's you. You did that. And we'll split that between us.
Right.
And she gets a percentage, a generous percentage, of that growth element. So she's incentivized to grow the business.
Of course.
And it's grown. And she's done, a fabulous job. And I haven't actually been in the office for over 2 years now.
And how did you find that transition to this baby, as you sort of said, your words that you grew to this wonderful and went through all the trials and tribulations to get there, and then didn't go to the office.
And then didn't go to the office. Yeah.
And did you worry?
Yeah. Yes. Of course you do. You ring every day.
Right.
How is it?
Yeah.
Everything all right? And what you get told is, everything's fine. Is it really? I also say my son works in the business as well. He's not in charge,
okay,
but he's in the business, and has been as long as Lynn, and they're both directors. So I have a family connection there as well. But unless that, you can't put your family in charge just because they're your family.
No.
You have to put in charge the person who's best to do the job. That's another discipline you've got to get in your head. And she was the best person for the job. So she runs it and does a brilliant job.
And will you... Sorry.
I was going to say, but you run it by the accounts.
Okay.
And you've got your own key indicators. Mine are the cash flow and the cash profit and all the other bits and pieces. We have a board report every month, which tells us everything we need to know. including issues on the horizon, mostly to do with legislation and things that are coming up, and what's going to happen when Brexit comes along, and all this sort of stuff. So all those things you read and you look at, but if you've done it properly and you've got your team in place, and they are running the business properly, and you are now only the shareholder. My title is chairman of the board, but that's meaningless, really.
Yeah.
But if you're there as a shareholder and your shares are there and they're producing you the money, then the company's doing all it's supposed to do, and you don't need to get involved in the nitty gritty.
As much as you wouldn't get involved in the shares that we own in your portfolio.
Exactly.
You are a shareholder.
You look at them and I say, oh, that's good, that's wonderful, well done, that's smashing. And then you say to me, oh, you know, this company here's made this new squidget. Oh, have they? How interesting. Not really interesting. No. Does it make any money?
Absolutely.
So you have to be that ruthless with yourself in terms of that's what you're doing with your business.
Yeah. And I think also intelligently, you know, when we met, that you obviously getting still paid, and you've got some, you know, you've extracted cash over the years, etc. But you've divested yourself, haven't you? You've got a broad portfolio of retirement savings.
Yes.
It's not. You know, it's not just the business.
No.
It's not just with me.
Nope.
It's in all lots of different things, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And what advice would you give people listening about that?
Well, that's diversity.
Right.
Is that be ruthless with yourself and the business. There's a big risk of you becoming bank of mum and dad to the business.
Right.
You are the easiest creditor not to pay, because you're not going to sue the business.
No.
But you have to be brutal in terms of saying that amount of money that I'm supposed to be taking out of the company is a debt the company owes me.
Yeah.
It's not a gift. It owes me that money, and it better pay it, you know, or they'll be held to pay.
Sure.
And so and it's a line in the accounts. You know, I said, you know, where's my bit? And they said, well, this just yours is coming out the EBITDA at the end. No. I want it there in a line, because if it's there in a line, you know that you've got to pay that. The company's got to pay it.
Yeah.
So as you think of me as the bank.
Yeah.
And the bank will come down you a ton of bricks if you don't honour your debts to them, and so will I. So you have to sort of manage it in that way.
Yeah.
And then, having got the money, extracting the money from the company, you've then got to decide, well, what do you want to do? Well, of course, I have a family, and they like to go on holidays and all that sort of thing, so there's a certain amount spent on that.
And your grandchildren.
Grandchildren coming up, so we're looking at property buying, not particularly as an investment. Could have got a portfolio with yourself, which is a great investment. But from the point of view of the kids having a property, I've got 5 grandkids, you know, so I'm looking at getting at least 5 houses, so that at a time of when they need one, well, they've got one, not to live in necessarily, but to sell and move, to do something with. I've structured that in such a way because, again, another great thing you've got to think of in the biggest expense that you can end up with is divorce. Yeah. And if you've got 5 grandkids, 2 of them may end up in divorce.
Quite possibly.
So you have to structure it in such a way that they don't actually own the house.
Yeah.
It's owned by a company.
Yeah.
Of which they are a beneficiary, but not.
Sure.
So the structure is important. And again, back to my contract experience, getting the paperwork right is more important than anything.
Yeah.
So having got the company into that situation, we're now looking at how you divest it out, and then you have to have your own vision of what you actually want to do with your life.
Yeah.
Because it's not.
Because you've been pretty busy up until that point.
Absolutely. Suddenly, there's a new. I mean, I don't want to digress onto this, but my interest was military history.
Yeah.
And I wrote a book. I wrote a book on the Battle of Waterloo.
Yeah.
And then from that book, I was approached to help restore the chateau, what's called the Chateau of Huguemont, on the battlefield of Waterloo. So I headed up a charity to do that, and I did it on the basis that they would allow us to erect a monument to the British Army that fought at Waterloo, because believe it or not, every nation that fought at Waterloo except the British has a monument to their army, and they've never ever allowed the British to have a monument there in 200 years.
Right.
So we negotiated. I negotiated again by contract. Wonderful things, specifying out what this monument was, and everything was going fine. And then the Belgians came back and said, "Oh, you cannot have your monument." And I said, "Oh, really? Why is that?" And they said, "It's too big." I said, "Well, it's specified in the contract, the size." No, it's too big. Why is it too big? It is bigger than the French monument. So I said, "You say that as though it's a bad thing." So there was a bit of a row about that.
Right.
But again, because we had the contract and because I had all the money, I said, "Well, that's terrible. That's very sad." They said, "Oh, yes, it's terribly sad." I said, "No, it's sad because I can't pay you any money now. You're in breach of contract."
Right.
And they did not understand it as a concept. And I said, "No, you need to go and talk to your lawyers. You're in breach of contract because you're not allowing us to have the monument that you agreed to have and signed. And because you're in breach, I simply can't give you any of the money, including the bit that the British government's given me to give you."
Right.
So, big row. And then they came back a week later and said, "Okay, you can have your monument."
Great.
So it's there, and that was a task done. So you do have to, or don't have to, but it's good if you can go and do something that you're interested in and want to do.
Yeah.
So we moved down here to Christchurch. Absolutely love it. We're here on the water's edge, so we've got a boat and we can go and potter around. And we just enjoy life. And to do that, you have to get over this hurdle of making yourself redundant.
Yeah.
And seeing that there's another life. For me, keeping the business as a lifestyle business has been a great success. Working in it, I think, would have been a disaster. Because if the problem with you working in your business as you get older is everybody defers everything to you. And they come along and say, "Okay, and you go, "Oh, yeah, I know that." And they say, "Well, I don't know how to do it." "Oh, I'll put it here and I'll do it then." Before you know who you are, they're all sitting around playing Candy Crush on their computers and you're doing all the work. So you have to move away.
Yeah.
If the job is, and our company is particularly like this, if the place is a place where they want to be and want to work and have a career and have a future, then they will make sure that company runs because they're invested in it, same as you are.
Yeah.
And if you make it that the CEO that you've got in there it is rewarded and dedicated and incentivized, it will work. I can be absolutely sure you of that. But you have to start. If you're in your late 50s, early 60s, you have to start that process now.
Yeah.
Because it's going to take you 5 years to get that person to a level where you're comfortable enough to step away and leave that person in charge.
Great.
And that's my advice to you.
Well, that's been fantastic, Barry. I mean, you're absolutely fascinating story, and there's some real nuggets in there. I mean, even for myself, just listening to you about, how do I make myself redundant in my own business going forward? I've got a few years yet to go.
Yeah. A young man.
but you're absolutely right, and I suppose that no business is bigger than any one individual. I often have a line about Richard Branson doesn't drive the trains or fly the planes. He's still important to his businesses, but he's not actually doing the business, if in essence.
Absolutely.
And of course, the sooner you can possibly get to the point where you are not the business, then you have all those other options: selling the business, staying in the business, keep working, or, as you say, letting the business allow you to be that investor and to reap a reward from it. Yeah. And I'm sure there's been a lot of pleasure. It probably still comes from seeing your family involved in it, seeing Lynn running a successful company. Obviously, you're getting rewarded continually, but letting that baby that you started in life continue in life.
Well, the beauty of it is, of course, it will still be there when you've gone.
Yeah.
And if you run it yourself, if you die, it dies.
You've left a legacy.
It's a legacy carrying on.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely, really informative and enthralling. So thanks, Barry.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Wow. What more can I say? What a wonderful insight into Barry's experience of exiting his business. If you did miss the first part of our chat, then head to iTunes or to our website, theretirementcafe.co.uk, to download it today. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please write a review on iTunes and share the podcast with friends and family. Until next time, this is Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Cafe podcast with Justin King. To find out more, you can find us online at theretirementcafe.co.uk.